We're going to call the public safety meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd. Alderman,
He's excused.
noted. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Muhammad.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Chairman Vaccaro.
Present.
5 present.
Okay, so
She in the kitchen giving them
we have a
cake.
quorum then? No.
Yes, you do have quorum.
So I need a motion to approve the minutes from the October 8th meeting.
I make the motion that we approve the minutes from the October 8th meeting.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd. Alderman Ornowitz.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Chairman Vaccaro.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
Okay, and today, Alderman Muhammad's going to be acting as vice chairman of the committee. And so what I'd like to do is Director Edwards, if you want to come up and start by making a statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to appear in front of this committee. Much local and national attention has been brought to bear on our city because of the shooting deaths of 13 children this past summer. It is important that I, as well as the police department, not appear to be callous or uncaring, but always empathetic to victims' situations. No one deserves to die as a result of gun violence, especially children. We never want to blame the victim. Consequently, I have been reluctant to discuss in detail the circumstances surrounding their deaths. However, I think that it is necessary to put the investigations in context and share a few facts in light of the conjecture we have recently heard. The purpose here is not to demonize anyone. The facts are the facts. We characterize the children as 10 and over and under 10. With respect to the children, 10 and over, 2 are believed to have committed suicide, and a 15-year-old was found deceased in the early morning with an automatic weapon on his person with an extended ammunition magazine, $5,000 in cash, and a large quantity of drugs. And a deceased 16-year-old was on the police carjacking offender list. He was allegedly shot in a crossfire engaged in by 2 other 16-year-olds. And finally, another 15-year-old was alleged to have been ravaging inside a vehicle in the early mornings at the time of his death. With respect to the children under 10, none of them was at fault for anything. They were just being innocent children. Neither of them was a target, but some adults and teens around them were targets. It is imperative that when citizens see something that is suspicious or know something that might prevent a shooting, please call the police. In our city, 15 homicide victims this year were also previously arrested for homicide. I know and I agree there are many social and societal reasons that lead our children to unfortunate situations, and we must do more than police on the back end. Our families need jobs, good housing, good education, and hope that they can achieve equally and lawfully in our city. I pray for and encourage everything possible to achieve this. For 25 years, my judicial oath was to do justice. In my capacity as presiding judge of the juvenile court, my job was to do what was in the best interest of children and families. Understanding the negative impact that the school-to-prison pipeline, for example, had on black and brown children, I started a school to protect children from some of the criminal influences that they encountered daily. My school is in its 11th year of existence, and it has greatly benefited children in the city of St. Louis. My job now, as Public Safety Director, is to make our city safer and protect all of our citizens and visitors from crime. My commitment is well documented. I am deeply concerned about gun violence against children and others in our region. We are working hard to fix the problem. Mr. Chairperson, I am happy to be here along with Commissioner John Hayden, Major Mary Warnicki, Colonel Jerry Layshak, and Colonel Rochelle Jones. We're prepared to answer any questions that you might have with respect to the police department, its operations, and its budget. Thank you.
Commissioner King, Director King, hang on one second. Does anyone have questions of the director?
I just want to make a quick comment.
You have a comment?
So I'll go down the list then. We're just going to, Alderman Arnowitz. Comments, questions?
I guess mine's more of a comment. And, you know, I appreciate what you have to say. I think we know what a lot of the problems are here in the city of St. Louis. But I also think policing is getting harder by the day for officers to do their job. You know, crime's going to happen. You could have a policeman on every other block, and it's going to happen the block they're not on. You can't stop shooting unless you know about it ahead of time and things like that. It just seems lately our system between the circuit court and the police department just hasn't been on the same page. We're constantly fighting. One of my biggest problems I have is the police officers that's on the exclusion list or whatever we want to call it. I guess the point is nobody gives you the answer. It's like a tennis game. It gets passed back and forth. The circuit attorney's office says, well, Major in the police department has this and he knows about it and he's handling it. The major says he knows nothing about it. So instead of trying to get to the root and sitting down and figure things out, you know, that's a big deterrent right there. So first of all, on that scenario, you know, policemen feel like nobody's backing them when they're right. If they're wrong, you can't back them. I mean, it's just that obvious. But there's policemen, I guess my question is policemen that's on the list that's been involved in shootings, I guess the first step would be they have to be cleared through the forced investigation unit. And once they are, I would imagine that goes to the circuit attorney's office and then they review it. So one of my question is there any policeman that's on that list involved in a shooting that hasn't been cleared? And if they haven't, or if they have and it's went forward, we're not getting no answers.
Thank you very much for your comments and your question, Alderman. I met with the circuit attorney last week with respect to the so-called exclusion list. There are about 30 or 40 folk on that list that are either still associated with the police department in one way or another. We have been able to remove some officers off that list where they are now having the ability to go back to the circuit attorney's office. But you're absolutely correct with respect to officer-involved shootings. There still exists about 8 officers that were around as witnesses or involved with officer-involved shootings dating all the way back to 2016. And so we're working on trying to move that list forward. The bulk of the officers that are on the exclusion list today are those officers that are associated with the Philadelphia social media post. And we're working diligently to try to get that corrected. I hope to have that completed this week.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. I would just hope that, you know, we're not, I mean, let's be honest. And I'm a pretty honest person. You know, there was a policeman on that list. His Facebook post was 2 years before he became an officer.
I am familiar with
I've seen
that.
that. My point is, we're short officers, as everybody says on the streets, and you pull a good officer off the streets and put him in somewhere like communication. That does nothing for the citizens of St. Louis or the police department. Till recently, you know, I was out on the streets with the police. I ride every district because I want to make sure there's transparency between officers and citizens, and I thought it's worked well. But, you know, there were some innuendos that I was just showing up and hopping in police vehicles and taking off, which was totally farthest from the truth. And
Alderman, I am very familiar with the officer that you're talking about. I'm very familiar with the situation that you are talking about. We have had lots of discussions with respect to that, and I hope to be able to have further discussions with you offline and not in this environment.
well, it irritates me because sometimes I have to do it that way, because one thing, whether you like it or not, the police department is under the control of the city. The commissioner is the commissioner. You're the director. I believe any elected official is entitled to ride if they want to. Now, with that being said, I think we're all adults, and God forbid something happened, the police department would not be held liable. So I've checked that with the city councilor. And I've looked up, and I know of no cases where a police department's been sued by a relative over liability when they've signed the waiver. So I'm going to leave it at that, and hopefully we'll have more discussions.
Yes, we will. I respect
you.
your opinion. Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Tamika Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and thank you, Judge Edwards, for coming before us. I wasn't really sure what the whole premise was of this meeting. I see a lot of different issues jumping out.
Yeah, I mostly, and I thought when we got to the chief, my point is a lot of the mistruths that are being put out, and I will say specifically by a lot of the Facebook stuff comes from Jeff Rorta about cars, about funding, and so I brought my book, and I am going to go through item by item with the chief and let him tell me if,
Okay,
you know,
okay.
and that's really why we're here, but I did want, the director asked if he could come up and speak to his statements the other day, which I'm perfectly fine with, so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and since you mentioned that, I'll definitely speak to that, because with all due respect, Judge Evers, I feel like you had to explain your commitment to your job, and I think that's horrible to have to do that. I can attest to your leadership and your tenure and how you've done the work prior to even serving in this capacity, and so that's why I caution myself from always talking to the media. They do some of the most demonic, divisive work just within our city, and so they'll chop your words, they'll spin it, they'll skew it. I know in your capacity, you do have to talk to them some, but they always try to spin things, and I think that you should not have had to come and explain yourself and talk about some of those intimate details of some of those cases regarding children in our community. And we all know children who have a lot of stuff going on, and so the issue is bigger than just babies being murdered in our community. Some of these babies are involved in some very serious activity, and I just really hate that you had to explain that, because if you get caught up in this whole hype of a thing that the media does with trying to vilify and paint you in a bad light, then it's counterproductive, and it keeps you from doing your job. I'm somebody who was ostracized. My entire family was ostracized for months in the media, so I have little respect or regard for them, and I rarely talk to them. But I just hope that we all can continue to do the work. There's so many issues going on outside of just everything, you know, and there's divisions, and there's stuff with the circuit attorney's office. You have the police officers union doing this. You know, you have other people who don't get along, and it's really crazy because our constituents are dependent on us to make some decisions to do the right thing to make us have a safer city, and that's where I hope that we can get as a body, as people who've been elected to lead the masses of people, as a body who's seeing babies die every day. I hope that we can get past the petty politics, the stuff that happens in the media, the issues regarding people lying on social media about funding. We spend a lot of hours and Ways and Means trying to make sure that we address needs across the board. In certain situations where departments were top heavy, we made those hard decisions trying to just make everything work. And so when you see people put this fodder out there, which helps nobody, it's kind of disheartening in a way, and I definitely know my constituents have no appreciation for it. They just want to be safe. They could care less about who's saying this on Facebook, who's saying this on social media, who's painting this person in a bad light. That doesn't help us. And so I just want to commend you for your efforts. I have not ever, since I've been here, had the accessibility to a director of public safety like I have with you. I feel I can call you, you answer phone calls, and so I commend you for your efforts, and I hope that we continue to do the work and let the people who play in the media, let them play and just do the work.
Thank you, Alderman.
So that's all I have, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Vice Chair John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, thank you, Mr. Director, for clarifying and making it clear about the remarks that the media is circulating. I do have a question. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about the environment or the matters that surrounded the death, specifically of the 13 children?
Well, those are details that I'm reluctant to have. Many of these investigations are still ongoing, and certainly we don't want to compromise investigations. It's one of the reasons that we don't have these types of discussions. But I just felt that the conjecture had just poisoned our community just a bit, and I felt compelled that I needed to address it.
Absolutely. Again, thank you, again, Mr. Director, and I think you are doing a fantastic job in leading the Department of Public Safety, not only the police department, but the other several divisions that you have command over. I think you're doing a fantastic job, and again, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate, and I do appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
So I'm ready now, if the chief's willing to come up. Chief, I brought my budget book along, and if you need recollection, I'll pass my budget book over. I could at any point have the vice chair come over. I could come up with you, but there's been a lot of stuff put out. We spent $500,000 over 3 years for Cure Violence. Okay, and the answer to that was that money should have been spent for the 140 officers. Now, I can tell you, you are fully funded for 1,319 officers. I could break it down to sergeants, to whatever you want to break it down to. Not a dime has been taken out of your budget. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, sir. Are you talking about for salaries?
For salaries?
Yeah, I don't believe that any money was taken away for salaries.
And you're funded, fully funded for all 1,319 officers. I brought the budget director too, and I got my book, and I know what we funded because I sit on Ways and Means.
Yes, sir. I was not prepared to talk about our budget, but I'm saying, to my knowledge,
This is all about your budget. This is all about
well,
cars
sir,
that are
hold on.
not being.
Excuse me, sir. I was sent a letter, a email from Mr. Kennedy
Right.
about what we were going to talk about today, and it said that we wanted to talk about crime reduction and what the police department is doing about it. So nobody told me anything about line items on budget, but in general, I know that we are funded for our officers.
Okay. I just want to dispel all this. There's pictures of cars driving around with caution tape holding doors shut. Are there cars running around? And I do have not only the big, large increase in the amount of cars, but I just want to dispel some rumors. Are these cars actually on the street where officers are forced to drive cars with caution tape holding the doors shut?
Absolutely not. No officer was asked to drive a car
Yeah.
with scene tape holding the door
Yet,
together.
these pictures were online.
That is
Tires
correct.
that were so bald, and I would assume these pictures had to have been taken in a shop, but are we allowing the officers to drive around in cars that are so dysfunctional they should not be on the road?
No, we're not, sir. Matter of fact, every Sunday morning, there's a car inspection with the sergeant and the officers. That's a traditional thing that we've done over the years. So if an officer believes that they're driving a car that's unsafe, that will be brought to the attention, and then it will be taken out of the circulation.
And I appreciate your answers. This year, not only did what you had asked for, the budget division and the fleet replacement, the rolling stock, plus the capital 1010 account, you guys received which was way more than you even asked, but $3,170,528 for new cars this year. If you want a copy, I can give you a copy.
Okay?
So, I mean, we gave you that money for cars. And my understanding is there's at least 63 new SUVs that are, and Paul, why don't you come up? Because Paul actually, and if I'm wrong, I also want to know that.
Sir,
Because
I'm not saying anybody's wrong.
because-
I wish I'd have known. I'd have brought my budget director over to go line by line with you.
Well,
But that being said, certainly I don't know what numbers.
I can address that one.
He can-
Okay, sure,
he can-
all right.
And if I'm wrong, I obviously want to know, because either we are, as a board, need to address all these issues, or some of this is just hype. And that's really what I want to know. So Paul, you
Good morning,
sent me
Mr. Chairman.
this.
Yeah, you're referencing an email that you had requested some information regarding what the budget, the FY20 budget,
Right.
related to police fleet
Right.
replacement. And as I indicated, and the numbers show, and if you don't have copies of this, I could provide it.
I can make copies for everybody.
In FY19, we budgeted $1.3 million in the general fund budget, and it's slightly higher in FY20, 1,350, basically, a $25,000 increase. In the Prop P funds, we also allocated an additional $1.2 million. So that was a $1.2 million increase there. And then in the capital fund, which we had about just under $200,000 budgeted last year, and that was in a rolling stock lease. This year, we have over $600,000. So we went from those three sources, we went from a total budget for fleet replacement from 1.5 million to 3.2 million. So that was more than doubling the budget in FY20 for fleet replacement. So that does take a while to be spent, and take a while for the.
That's for this year, though, correct?
That's for this year. Okay. And so that takes a while to be spent for those vehicles to occur. And again, the chief may know more about that than I, but there was an increase in allotment for vehicle replacements this year.
So it's my understanding that there's 63 new cars put out there, 63 new SUVs that are now in the department. I guess we're still spending money, and then
That have been ordered and probably arrive by February or so?
okay.
Yeah, I'll defer
Then-
to the chief on those details.
And these are the things that I want. And then I was also told by someone that there's several cars that were ordered that were not able to be put in the police fleet, and they're sitting in a parking garage somewhere that we spent all the department. spent all this money on some cars that are unusable that are sitting in a parking garage down there.
That's not true, sir. I know that there's a picture that's been floating around with a bunch of cars on top of a Blue Cross lot or something like that, and those cars are in the fleet. So that's a 2-year-old picture that's been floated around.
Okay, see, that's really, I'm not here to pick on you, believe me. I'm here to just get the facts, the
So
real
I
facts
just wish
out.
I'd have known that the conversation was going to be primarily about budget,
Well,
because
no, I
I'll be
mean,
prepared for
I don't know that so
crime
much-
reduction.
I don't know that it's so much about budget when we talk about crime reduction too, but it's about dispelling rumors. And the only way I know to dispel them is with facts. And, you know, I mean, and of course I have all this in front of me, and and then just for clarification, this year in the budget, and Paul could tell me otherwise, but it's just slightly less than $9 million allotted in there for overtime for officers. It is. I can tell you, I get it marked. It was 9 million, it's like a few dollars less than 9 million for overtime for uniform officers. 340,000 for civilian employees for overtime. These are real numbers. I mean, in the general fund. So, I mean, that's all in your budget. And again, the only reason I'm pointing these facts out is because when I tried to point them out, and specifically Jeff Rorta, he blocked me. He said, "You're now blocked. I don't get the facts out when fiction is much better." And it aggravated me because he said, "Well, Joe, you're not police friendly," and all kinds of other nonsense, which is absolutely fiction. I care more for the police than a lot of people. I mean, I'm out there, I support the police. This nonsense that the Board of Aldermen, the mayor, or whoever is not providing safe vehicles, that we took $5 million out of the police budget to do cure violence, when hopefully cure violence helps. But when I talk to people on the street, they're like, "You guys are underfunding the police." It's untrue. You guys are making them drive around and ratted out cars that are unsafe, that shouldn't be on the street, which I believe is untrue. And my main reason for bringing you in, and I'm sorry if Terry didn't understand that, you know, that we also included, and these were all things that you guys sent over in your budget, and we went beyond your budget. Requests that you had made, and we went beyond that on money, including we added an additional $4 million into Julian Bush's, you know, for lawsuits that we anticipate, and there was $5 million last year. So my whole thing, and then we can switch subjects, but I just want to point blank ask you: are we underfunding you? Are your guys driving around in cars that should not be on the street?
Officers are not driving around in cars that are derelict vehicles, which is what those postings look like, derelict vehicles.
And are you funded even for the officers that are not hired? Like if tomorrow 40 guys showed up and said, "We're ready to go to work," is the money there to pay them?
Yes, sir. It's my understanding that we are fully funded for salaries if we have the officers.
Okay. So now I will go back over it. I just wanted to dispel those rumors, and it really aggravated me because not only does it make the Board of Aldermen, the mayor, they're also a lot of that same group that complain about the white shirts and being too top-heavy and that, you know, but I've been sitting back, and that really aggravated me because if this is true, we need to fix it. But I appreciate your honesty. What I think I'm going to do, and you can ask, you know, I probably would want to know stuff like also how are we doing on hiring and stuff, but let me go down the list. And Chief, I do appreciate you coming, and I appreciate the entourage that came out. And if anybody has a comment, they're certainly welcome to come up and speak to anything I talked on. It sounds nice to me that the sergeants are out there and checking these cars and
Absolutely.
everything's safe.
That's a traditional thing we do.
Okay. Well, God bless. Thanks, Chief. I'm going to go down the list, and I appreciate it. So, Jefferson, well, we're back to Alderman Arnowitz. Any comments on our questions maybe on how we're doing on stuff.
Couple comments. In the commissioner's defense, the committee discussion does say about crime issues. So I don't think he was, as he says, fully prepared for
appreciate that,
the budget.
That-
And so we got that straightened out, so, and just to say, I know there's no policemen riding in cars with their doors taped shut. You know, the only thing I do know, we do have a lot of high mileage cars out there that's breaking down,
That is
seems
correct.
like weekly.
That is correct.
And hopefully we're addressing that with the new vehicles coming. Hopefully they can get here faster and be equipped.
Absolutely. And we're also hoping that the UAW situation doesn't.
Yes, that's the main
Into the
thing, that's the main
delivery
thing we're
as well.
waiting on. Chief, I do have one question, and I think this may be the better way to get a more accurate number, if possible. So, in your estimated, how many officers do we actually have on the police department right now, a roundabout figure, that you can get close to?
So I'll tell you, we're actually 132 commissioned officers short. So we're authorized strength of 1340, so I'd have to subtract 132 from 1340, that would be the answer.
But when you say commissioned officers now, you're talking everybody in the police department?
Yeah, all commissioned persons, whether it be officers, sergeants,
On the streets or in
That's
the,
correct.
exactly. So I guess here's another question, and I don't know if this makes sense or not. So the Armory would have an accurate account of how many issued weapons are out there, right?
That is correct.
So is it possible that we could get a count from the Armory of weapons out there for all the commissioned officers right now to disperse? Because you say we're about 120 short. I personally think it's more, because you're going to have officers, every time you have a class graduate, you know, officers are retiring in between. So you're still picking up that end, and I would just,
So
if it's
each one-
possible,
Yes, sir,
if it's
each
not.
one would have a, you know, we wouldn't, let's say if they're on limited duty or
Right.
something like that, we don't seize the weapons, so we'd have now, the question is how many weapons do we own, but each officer, each commissioned officer has a weapon issued to him or her. So
Right.
that's how many
And they're not-
are distributed.
They're not turned in until they retire or whatever.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, so is it possible to find out exactly what the number is?
Sure. I'll be able to make that request, and I'll.
And no, I mean, no hurry, it's just a thought, because, you know, a lot of people who get on here, next door neighbor and all this, you know, I hear we're 500 short, we're not even short officers, so, you know, I like to pick a little fight with them once in a while.
Yes, sir.
All right, and that's all, but in the chief's defense, he read this, and I agree with him, and thank you. I know there's not, you know, vehicles out there that they drive in that kind of condition, because I would think they would refuse to drive them.
Absolutely, and nor would we be in the position to order somebody to drive an unsafe vehicle. That would
All right, well,
have
thank you, Commissioner.
liability associated with that.
And that number is, if you take that 130 plus the 30-something that are on Kim Gardner's list, plus you take guys out sick,
Right.
it's a much larger number. One other thing I was going to dispel was when they said that officers didn't have uniforms this year, we gave $1,055,000, $206 just for uniforms. So that's just something else I was going to dispel, but anyway, I'm sorry. Anyway, Alderwoman Tamika Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I hope we're not setting an odd precedent by having committee hearings to address rumors, because we'll be doing that every time. When people say stuff on social media, you know, we know the hard facts and the truth. Once they know they could goad us into constantly dispelling what they say, then I think it'll make us kind of counterproductive. But I thank you for definitely calling the
Well, I would say, though, people stop me in the store. and ask, why are we underfunding them? These are questions that I'm being
Right.
asked.
I understand,
And-
Mr. Chairman, and we
and-
live in a perception
Well, even-
terrain with being
even on
elected officials. I
Elliot's-
get it.
Even on Elliot's Facebook post, which has a lot of viewers, including me, he's got a lot of that stuff on there. So, I mean, a lot of people do ask me, and I wanted to dispel any rumors.
Right. Thank you, sir. I
I'm
thank
sorry,
God.
I didn't mean to disrupt.
That's okay. I thank God the bulk of my constituents don't hang out on social media, and they don't see my leadership via social media, because that's not what it's for. But, thank you for coming. If you could give us, a brief update, I guess, on some of the strategies. I do know that we were, I guess, selected by something, and so we have additional resources and overlay in our, community. And I would just like to know is they've only been here a short time, but are we seeing some progress with them being on the ground assisting, local law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am, we always do, and I'm turning to my page where I have about the things that we've done, so to speak, so instead of skipping some of the stats. But anyway, so the first thing we did, of course, you know, that we're up by 11 homicides year to date, and so we are at 160, 160 versus 149 this time last year. It was 157 in 2017. We've kind of had a cycle of this level of violence. And so the first thing that we did, of course, is we detached a sergeant and 6 detectives to the homicide division to help with the uptick in homicides. Now, I had already set up 3 crime reduction zones, and so we've talked about that in terms of rectangles and that, but of course there was the original one in the North Patrol Division, and we added one in the Central Patrol Division as well as the South Patrol Division. Each of those focuses on open-air drug markets. The reason being is there's such a strong correlation between open-air drug sales on the streets and shootings. Any one of those locations that people have identified through all the persons or what have you that have a high incidence of drug sales and that on the street always has a strong correlation between that and shooting incidents. And so that's what the directed patrol would be within the district. That's buttressed by the fact that we put our special assignment units as well, and those that'd be the mobile reserve, the SWAT unit, our K-9 division, our special operations, all also alternate locations to go inside of those rectangles and deal with the same issue. We do have a drug enforcement and investigation unit that actually does control buys and control deliveries as well, to kind of offset the flow of drugs in the city. I also like to mention that, interesting enough, the tie-in would be 192 overdose deaths this year in the city. And so if you add the overdose deaths along with the homicides, you're close to 300 drug-related deaths in St. Louis. I think so. Really, that's why our focus is really on the street drug activity. The close to 300 drug-related deaths across the city clearly shows you what the challenge that drugs places on our community. We do have, I'll mention the governor in a second, but, we already had officers on federal task forces, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the FBI, and the U.S. Marshal's Office. We also are starting a gun strike force that's already in effect, but we've had officers assigned to that as well. They're focused primarily on shooters. As a lot of the work goes into the forensics around shell casing collection, and that's how we determine who those shooters are. Between those various task force officers that we have, they've made 500 arrests, and so that's something that we're very proud of. Everybody is aware of the fact that the governor recently committed 25 personnel to assist in the mentioned task forces as well as to patrol the highways. And those patrols, the highway patrols, actually start this coming Tuesday, and so we're looking forward to that. We deploy. The department alone has 236 high-visibility cameras distributed across the city, as well as 200 license plate readers. The city has its own, another 237, and Judge Edwards is working on a plan that's really going to double that number probably within a year or so. We work with Better Family Life on deconfliction, and we support the Urban League's Save Our Sons program, believing that getting people, jobs and those types of things before they get into a life of crime. That's pretty much the strategy, and we do have the ability to talk more in depth because I brought each one of those bureau commanders. But again, we are definitely dealing with the violent crime. I would mention that we're up 11 homicides a day. Back on the 22nd of September, we're actually up 20 homicides. And so we are definitely trending in the right direction as we go toward the end of the year. Just real briefly, I would like to mention, we already talked about the fact that we're 133 officers short. I might mention that we have, according to 4 of our actively engaged recruiters, and so again, the recruiters would tell you that the biggest barrier to recruitment is, of course, residency. And I know that the alderman had a vote on that a couple of weeks ago. I would just ask that be taken into consideration over the next several months, and that at least maybe a consideration about a public safety exception to the residency rule. But again, those are the challenges that we face every day. We've hired 90 commissioned officers since the first of this year, but we have had 101 retirements or other separations in the same time frame. So we have 50 recruits in the academy, and we're going to have a class of 40 starting on Monday.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving us an update. We definitely needed that to address 2 issues that you said, and I'm wondering, like, as a public safety committee, if we could really look into what's going on with the hiring process. We do know that residency is somewhat of a barrier, but we also know that it's some things going on within our hiring process, not just with the police department, but citywide, where I don't know what kind of issues it is, but there are many people who are applying for these jobs, and they are getting turned around. And I'll never forget when I was in graduate school, one of my classmates, she was getting her master's degree in criminology like myself, and she went through a lot just to get on the police department. She had worked in St. Louis County, and so they were asking her some stuff about her dad. I think he had a criminal past, and she didn't even know this man. And so that let me know way back then. She ended up getting on, but she, left and went and did some other things. But that let me know that it's something going on within our hiring process, where I don't know if people are being very stringent in how they rate these applications or what. But I think it's bigger than just the residency. I think we need to definitely look at that. And secondly, we had a public safety meeting just the other day, and an organization came before us, and she brought something to our attention that I had never thought about it. I mean, she spoke of the rectangle, and she spoke of just messaging with saying that. And so I never looked at it. I'm looking at it like, okay, this is the footprint, this is our hot spot, this is what we need to work on. But she brought up a point. She said, well, we keep saying the rectangle, then people may say, oh, I don't want to buy a home, it's in the rectangle. Or I don't want to go shop at the grocery store, it's in the rectangle. Or the school my kid may go to, it's in the rectangle. And so that's something I think that, I just never looked at, and so I think we may need to probably think about some of that. I know we on strategy, on mission, but it can have a negative connotation to it if we keep saying it so much.
I understand, and certainly that terminology can be modified. I think the key is that when I explain to people about what I would do as chief, I think that St. Louis finds itself in such a competing most violent crime city year after year after year. And so, of course, my focus was, what might you do to implement to fight violent crime? And so that was just a zone designated as where most of it occurs. And so if the messaging is too strong, has too much of a stigma attached to it, certainly we can look at changing how we focus on those types of things.
Okay. And thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, and Judge Edwards for coming, and your staff. And I guess I'm looking at it from a totally different perspective of how things are going on. I'm not really a Facebook person, but I heard a lot of things that had happened. But I think what has happened is it has caused a divide within our community with the police department. And I just don't think that's fair to them, because at the end of the day, and I tell people that all the time in my ward, I said, when they put their uniforms on, my prayer is they go home. I said, and what they're up against, it's like they're fighting an uphill battle. So you putting guys out here that has families just like the families that are being impacted. And I tell the residents, I said, just think about it, a police officer that's looking at dead children continuously, think how that impacts them when they go home to their families. And so I think the way this social media thing is, and people need to be real clear, it's social media. It's nothing for factual on social media. Anytime when they tell you about daylight saving time, they give you the wrong day. That's just telling you, it's social media. It's not accurate information. But I just feel we need to support the police. And I told the chief the other day, the police department is like any other business. You have good employees and you have bad employees. But I support the good employees 110%. Because I talk to them, just like Larry said, he rides with them. I talk to them. I go and introduce myself. I encourage them. And so I just think we need to build the relationships so people can understand they're human. And they have families, and they have issues going on. And so we as a community need to kind of support them to kind of help them with this transition, because a lot of them, it's new to them. But I feel that a lot of the older ones need to kind of help the younger ones kind of transition to be able to adapt to our communities. So thank you all for what you're trying to do. And as far as the budget, I know you all have plenty of money, so it's not where y'all suffering. And so we just need to get bodies in there to help do the work that needs to be done. Thank you very much. That's all.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Judge Edwards, for coming. And thank you for all the different responses and everything to this meeting. I kind of had to step out of this meeting because I was a little frustrated with the direction the meeting was going in, because I was looking at the agenda, and I don't even know if we really addressed what is on the agenda. So, just to speak, I guess, to what it seems to me the meeting was about, social media and the media in general. You know, I don't know if you all know, I just got on social media, so I really don't hold any weight in social media. I never would have spent time, not just my time, but you all's time, bringing you out to defend someone else's social media's post. So with that being said, I just thank you for all you're doing. I thank you for your efforts, Judge Edwards. You all know the 26th Ward is very diverse from one end to the next. So I was at a meeting last night in the Skinker-DeBolivar area, standing room only. Captains from not just you all, but WashU Police, you know, they on a team over there. Standing room only. But a meeting that I had 2 days before on the north end of my ward, it was about 5 people there. You know what I'm saying? So we know what the disconnect, we can identify what the disconnect is. We know what the issues are. We just have to all not waste energy on things like social media posts, media in general, and do the work that we know we need to do. I thank you for the work that you're doing over with Captain Mueller.
Yes, ma'am.
Me and him spoke last night. I know what he's doing. A lot of times, people don't know what people are doing because it's not for public, it's not for social media, but that doesn't mean they're not doing the work. And people know that. People that really care and are not trying to spin and be divisive in the community, they know that. So I support you all. You know that. Anything I can do to help you all, please let me know. And hopefully we can all work together collectively and balanced in the community to fight this crime and this violence. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Honorwitz.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. And Chief, you know what, and I can personally dispel a lot of facts out there, because no matter what people think, I've ridden up north at nights, afternoons. 99.9% of the people love the police. The problem is, and they talk to the police, and my biggest problem I seen out there, they'll let you know what's going on, but don't use my name or tell them where you get, and I get it. I mean, I really get it. But, I mean, the biggest majority of people support the police. It's just hard for them to come out and say it, and I get it. But, just, once we all learn to band together, go to court together, I think people will get the idea, hey, people are standing up, we're going to move to somewhere else. And hopefully, we can somehow get to that direction and assure them, you're not going to get retaliated against, which is almost impossible to do. You can do your best to do it. And so to me, that's always been a myth out there, what I've learned out there. And I will say kudos to your police officers in the 1st District the other night who got a car that was involved in a drive-by shooting the night before, and they found some weapons and drugs and everything else. So, someone's being taken off the street then.
Absolutely.
So, but kudos to your policemen out there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Alderman. Commissioner, I have several direct questions. My first question is, can you explain the different divisions in the police department in your structure? Specialized enforcement, investigative services, professional standards, and technology solutions.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain those more in depth?
So
exactly
professional
what those
standards
are?
is going to be, the divisions assigned to professional standards are going to be the academy, the force investigative unit, the IED, several others. I don't have my organizational chart in front of me, but those types of units are in professional standards. Other administrative, several of the administrative units. Our special assignments has a lot of our support units. Colonel Jones is over our special assignments that has our SWAT team, our mobile reserve, it has our traffic safety division, has our canine division, and has our partnership with the helicopter. So special assignments kind of just, the things that are in there, the support units to provide for the patrol division. The community policing is Colonel Layshot. Those are the officers on the street, for lack of a better word or term, the officers on the street report all the way up through the chain to Colonel Layshot. And then the other one is investigative services, is our crimes against persons. Major Warnick is a deputy commander. That's going to have your homicide division, your child abuse, your sex crimes unit, your a host of other units. I mentioned child abuse, the juvenile division, several of those units that investigate. We've assigned special detectives to handle certain types of crimes. So that'll be your special assignments. Information and technology is going to be your real-time crime center, your intelligence division. I think that's pretty much in there. Oh, and your task force officers that are not in the drug enforcement, all the task force officers except the ones in the drug enforcement, because they're assigned to special assignments.
Absolutely. And what bureau or division has supervision over the Metrolink security?
That's going to be under special assignments.
Okay, great. So that leads me to my second question. Why has the mayor asked St. Louis County to provide more security for Metrolink in city boundaries outside of our city police
Right,
department?
I don't know if that was the mayor's ask or the county's gratuitous workings. I know that Metrolink has always been a concern, and so I think the county has 40 some odd officers assigned to that task force. We only have 8, and so I think that the goal was to provide better internal. Or rather, city, in other words, you got the lion's share of the people that are involved are from the county, but they also primarily work the county portion of the train, and to assist us, I guess considering certainly our charge of manpower to better buttress what's going on inside, they've given us additional officers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. A couple more questions for you. The governor did say that he is going to send 25 state troopers to the city of St. Louis.
That's 25 personnel, some of whom are state troopers. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we know exactly where they're going to be stationed, what highways, what areas, and what is their real primary responsibility?
Sure. So they're going to patrol. They're going to do what I refer to as kind of mix-up patrol plans. So people won't know exactly when they're going to be out there. They're going to patrol all of the highways in the city. I know that when we first asked them a year or so ago, the focus at that particular time was Highway 70 between downtown and Goodfellow, primarily because we had a series of shootings on the highway. And so their ability to be out there, in other words, when we're trying to focus on violent crime on regular streets, their presence there was certainly welcomed to be on the highways to kind of offset some of that. And certainly that was successful. We appreciated that help, and they've offered to do it again.
Now, how many officers will there free up from your immediate department?
So it'll allow us to redeploy probably at any given time, 12. I know at any given time there'll be 12 troopers on various highways, and so we'll be able to redeploy those officers as we are available. And like I said, it's going to be staggered, so it's not going to be like X amount every day. I think they'll probably have most of them along the weekends, and so we'll be able to move officers around based on that.
Now, in regards to the highway patrol coming in, is there an understanding that their job is for monitoring and security? Are they going to stop every car they see if they don't have a license plates? Will we see an increase in people getting locked up over traffic tickets? Or I'm asking so I can make sure I need to get paid fines.
Yeah, I would. In other words, of course, they're going to write tickets, and so I can only assume that there'll be an increase in ticket writing, I guess. But the focus is really their presence more than the ticket itself. They'll be focusing on violent crime as well. But the stop, if you will, that oftentimes yields guns and other contraband comes from a traffic stop.
Thank you. And KMOV reported yesterday or a day ago, 58, this may be a question for the director, 58 indictments were brought under due to the crime safety effort that is under your department, right?
Okay, and I'm sure that's at least 58.
Okay.
Maybe they're talking about, I don't know what time frame, but certainly they brought 500 indictments last year, so I don't know what time frame that 58 was referring to.
Are you talking about the federal indictments?
Right, that was referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
The Attorney General, in its partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office, have indicted 58 people through its grant program. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office has received close to 600 cases, and it has indicted 558 cases that resulted as a result of this permitless gun carry law from January 1st of 2017, which I believe is harming the citizens of the city of St. Louis. It has certainly taken away one of the greatest tools that our police officers had to keep us safe. And so because of that, and because those cases are not being indicted and tried at the state level, those cases are sent over to the federal court, yet they require a federal nexus. So generally people that are felons in possession of weapons are the only ones that we're able to send over.
Thank you, Mr. Director. And my next question is, I know we keep talking about residency, Commissioner. Now, I know the mayor did do an executive order where she waived police applicants who do not stay within the boundaries of the city of St. Louis. How many waivers did she exactly issue, and did that help with police recruitment?
Yeah, it's my understanding that only a very few were issued, and I think the key is that people, when they say residency waiver, I think that to have to reapply for it, or for there to be some conditions attached is what I think was the concern was. And so I think that the interest in waivers is kind of, how can I put it? Officers want to be able to say, hey, can I move with no further follow-up? I want to be able to, if I don't want to have to uproot my family, and I don't want to have to come out of the same school district. I don't want to have to reapply for a waiver. And so if that's not clear, so arguably it's a communication issue. If that's not clear to the officers, they're not going to be interested in coming to the city. That being said, if that could be cleared up, there could be an influx of waivers.
How many officers do you need to be fully staffed?
I need a minimum of 132 more to be fully staffed. That's what we're down to 132, yes, sir.
What's the total number?
1340 is the total number. 1340 is the authorized strength.
out at 1340, what is the largest population of your officers? What bureau or division do they belong in?
Out of the 1340, the most significant, most of those are patrol officers. So that'll be the rank of patrolman is the biggest portion of that number. Yes, sir.
And do they report directly to you, or is that through Lieutenant Colonel Lakeshaw?
Well, most of them will report to Colonel Layshaw. They will be in his bureau for the, for that rank. Of course, some of them might be detectives as well, potentially.
It's a question for you, or maybe the lieutenant will be better answering as well. Between South, North, and Central Patrol divisions, what division needs the most officers right now?
Well, I would say that right now, that what we've tried to do is, with the shortage, we've tried to balance them out. And so they all are equally suffering, if you will. I would tell you that if we had 130 officers, we could have 25 more officers per district. And that would be a huge visibility, address the visibility issue that so often the alderpersons mention about visibility. And so imagine 25 officers more per district would be phenomenal in addressing visibility issues that your constituents have.
Absolutely. So my next question is, what district sees the most overtime?
That's an excellent question. I actually don't know if there would be a large, that I'd have to research that, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you which district utilizes the most overtime. We've given the authorization for all the captains to use it as needed, and certainly not indiscriminately, but certainly as needed. We've encouraged them to use it in certain instances, but I'd have to research which district has actually used more than the other districts.
Okay. How do we divide up overtime across district lines? Do we have an answer for that?
It wouldn't be that one district has its own pot. So that's one general fund for overtime. So it wouldn't be that some districts have more overtime allotted to them than others. But Colonel Leshak, if you could follow up with that question about if there's you could check with Dave Daniels to see if there's some usage of overtime that we could share with the alderman about which one utilizes the most. Something we can research.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just have two more questions. And can you speak to the collaborative efforts between the police department and the federal task force and other jurisdictions as it relates to crime prevention or crime fighting? Sure.
So it's all very active. I think the relationships that we have are very favorable. Like I said, the one that I think that's really going to have a significant impact on what we're doing is the one we just started with the ATF. That's a gun crime strike force that's going to specifically focus on shooters, but we do have ones assigned to the FBI. We have DEA, FBI, DEA, U.S. Marshals, and I'm trying to see if I'm leaving somebody out. DEA, FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, I believe that's it.
Out of all the collaborations that we have, which collaboration or which federal agency has produced dramatic results? Where have we seen the most productivity from?
Yeah, I would say that you said dramatic. I think certainly they've all done a good job. I think that our work on those task forces, I mean, for example, the U.S. Marshals, volume-wise might be not the same as maybe the FBI, but I guess the point would be is that they're going after the most violent offenders in the area, and so when you multiply some of those, like let's say if it's a shooter that's a prolific person, the idea that they would remove somebody on the street that's a bona fide shooter on many occasions would be would certainly make the city safer, but may not have they all obviously wouldn't have the same number of arrests. But I would certainly say that all of the relationships with our federal partnerships are very productive and worthwhile.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Commissioner. I don't know if any other committee member has questions or if any other alderman would like to pose questions to the chief or director. That's it. I turn the meeting back over to the chairman, Chairman Vaccaro.
Thank you. Chief, thank you. And I appreciate your answers, and I respect you guys.
Yes, sir.
These were just things that were aggravating me. Anyway, so in If any of your group have any questions they'd like to ask us, then I would ask for an adjournment. If anyone wants to move to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
We got first and second. So the meeting's adjourned. Thank you so much, and God bless. Thank you for coming out.